Shireen has someone who's perhaps most hurt by the paralysis of the last 5 years, the infrastructure space. She has Ajit Gulabchand with her as well as Vinayak Chatterjee. Shireen, go ahead.
Absolutely, I have not one but two infrastructure men joining me here, Ajit Gulabchand and Vinayak Chatterjee. Vinayak, I know you always come down with a list of things that you want to talk about. What are your key takeaways as far as what you heard today?
Look, in a almost 65-minute speech, he pressed so many buttons.
Yeah.
From women's issues to solar power, that I asked myself, what are my 6 key takeaways? So it's very much a list of 6 which are my personal takeaways. The first, I think he hit very hard on a developmental model which is state-centric.
Yeah.
The important point he made that the winning team in this country is not the Prime Minister with his cabinet colleagues, but the Prime Minister with 29 chief ministers. That's the winning team. It's a completely different way of looking at governance. That's point one. Secondly, he talked of development as an inclusive Jan Lok movement, almost in a sense emphasizing what Gandhiji did to mobilize people for the Quit India movement. He said a similar movement is now required for development. So taking development into a mass movement is something that he very strongly put forward. Point 3 is he raised the vision. He raised the vision on infrastructure agenda vis-a-vis railways, access, solar energy, energy security. He raised the bar on what is possible. Point 4, he talked about the implementation deficit arising out of the governance deficit, saying all the things that are worrying us, like coal linkage, like inadequate power, and lack of access to water, and are all simple issues of implementation and governance. And he said it's easily done. So I think basically he talked about implementation as the key requirement right now in terms of getting the country moving. In terms of point 5, he made pointed references to dignity of life of the poorest of the poor, of giving a minimum, of defining infrastructure standards with minimum deliveries of electricity, water, etc., etc., harping again and again on the dignity of living. And my last point is that he talked about the trust deficit. He talked about the trust deficit between government and bureaucracy, between government and the common man, between government and business. And finally flipped it around to talk about that the government's role is not that of what he alluded to was the current behavior pattern of Malik, owner, but that of a trustee. These were my broad 6 takeaways.
Okay, I'll come back to you in just a bit, but Ajit Gulabchand, I want you to weigh in on that, the issue of deficits that he actually talks about, a governance deficit, a fiscal deficit, a current account deficit, and of course a trust deficit, and this needle of suspicion that points towards industry every time an investment is made. And he very categorically stated that you need to change the mood, you need to change the sentiment towards industry. Easier said than done, given where we are today?
Not really, but understand something. What he was laying down in talking about the paradigm of Indian growth now was what are the foundations, what is the foundation that it should stand on. He primarily said that India has some wonderful strengths, one of them being demography, democracy, that it's a free country, as well as it has a large market. So with all these 3, India is in a position to become a very prosperous nation, which it was 1,000 years ago. So it is not as if poverty is endemic to us for a year. No, I mean, no, we have been given the impression by the Congress governments from time to time that we are very poor, we are very poor, we are very poor. So, as though we were never ever rich, which is not true. That is the point.
Right.
So, fundamentally laid that foundation. But these are the foundations on which we should put. And governance, for it to improve, must go back to the concept of trust issue. And I think that's a very important point. Then obviously, he has reversed the entire philosophy of Jawaharlal Nehru's socialist centrally planned economy, where everything will be done by the government. And he feels no, government is only a facilitator, must create the environment for business to invest and create jobs. We must understand that investment is good, and investment doesn't mean some big manufacturing plant alone. Investment means all forms of investment that yield a certain amount of return and create jobs and create growth that will bring in the employment that we need. Now, don't forget, India has to employ 300 million people in the next 20 years. To put your arms around that figure, America employs 135 million people today, which means you need 2 American-sized economies in order to get that employment. No, Shireen, that is the point.
No, I get the point. I'm not disputing that at all.
No, to make that happen, outside the television, to make that happen, we need investment.
In 10 seconds, because we've got to go to our other guests. So the big highlight for you was the concept of trusteeship, government being the trustee.
No, the big highlight for me is that we must improve governance by behaving like trustees. The second highlight for me is that we must encourage investment and create a climate for that. Even reduce the plethora of laws we have in order to create a better governance.
10 seconds, Vinayak Chatterjee, before I toss it back to other guests. The big highlight for you.
Decentralized, inclusive development, as Ajit rightly said, moving away from the central model into empowering chief ministers.
Making the planning commission irrelevant. That was another jibe that he made.
One side called it a nonsensical bureaucratic settlement.
Yes, he did, and so did several people, including Kamalat, who had many things to say about that. But Lata, back to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Shireen. We have more guests joining in. Dr. Subir Gokaran, former Reserve Bank Deputy Governor and currently Head of Research at Brookings Institution, as well as Sanjay Dutt also joining in. Dr. Gokaran, your key takeaways, sir?
Well, I frankly was expecting somewhat more specific policy-oriented speech, given the build-up that we saw. I didn't think that it had very specific policy measures, but I think the key message in justifying that lack of detailing was the point that governance is more important than policies. So that the idea here is not to get into a very elaborate dispute or disagreement on what needs to be done. And I think when we look at the policy debate that's been going on for the last few years, the solutions to specific problems, I think, are ones on which there is a broad consensus. What you have to do to address the specific stress points in each sector, whether it's agriculture, whether it's minerals, whether it's manufacturing, and some of these have been consensus solutions for a long time. The question is, how do you get them done? What is the political process? What is the administrative process? What is the implementation process by which these solutions are implemented? So what I would take away from this is that there isn't really going to be very much of a discontinuity, if you will, if there is a change in government after the elections, in terms of the broad policy direction. Where the difference is, as is being positioned by Mr. Modi himself in the speech, but also more broadly in the BJP campaign or the NDA campaign, is the ability to deliver, and that's really I think the differentiating factor that they are trying to position, trying to emphasize in terms of how they would address the problems that the economy is facing.
All right, Mr. Seshasai is also with us.